Hey everyone and welcome back to the Java tutorial series. Last time we covered loops. If you missed that video, you can find the link in the description below. Today we're diving into classes and objects, a core concept in object-oriented programming in Java. By the end of this video, you not only know how to create your own classes and objects, but also understand best practices, naming conventions, and how to avoid common mistakes. Let's get started. Imagine you designing cars. Before you decide on specific details, you start with a general concept, a blueprint. You know the car will need doors, a brand, and a color, but you haven't defined the exact values yet. Your mind hasn't come up with a color yet, it just knows it needs a color at the end. And this blueprint is what we call a class. A class defines what an object consists of, its attributes and its behaviors, but you haven't specified it yet. Once you've outlined these properties, you can create a specific car, maybe a black Porsche with 5 doors, and this is an object, a concrete instance of the class. At the end, you'll be able to create many different cars from one class, just like you can build many houses from one blueprint. And this is very useful. In programming, we often want to represent real-world entities like a bank account, a game character, or a product in a store. Classes help us organize and structure our code clearly and logically. Let's try to implement our simple example of a class in Java. First, I'm going to create a new package with the name OOP, which stands for Object-Oriented Programming. Inside this package, I'm going to create a new class by right-clicking, select New, choose Class, and type the name of our class. Since we are going to design cars, I'm going to call it car. Remember that the convention of naming classes is that the name should be in singular and start with a capital letter. Therefore, cars in lowercase letter and plural would be a bad class name. Inside our just created car class, we are now allowed to list all of the properties our designed car should have. So my car class has 4 properties: color, year, brand, and doors. Each one is declared with its type, followed by the name, and ends with a semicolon. Now to see some output, we'll need a main method. Instead of placing it in the same class, I'll create a separate main class with its own main method. Inside this main class, we can access our car class and its properties by creating objects. Because remember that we just created a class and are now allowed to create as many objects as we want with different specifications for the attributes we just created. And to create an object from a class, we type the class's name followed by an identifier of your choice for our object and assign a new car using the equal sign. The new car syntax instantiates the actual object with empty or default values for the properties since we didn't specify them yet. If I wanted to access an attribute, let's say the brand of this object, I use its name I assign to it, and with a dot I can call every attribute which is declared in its class. So I can call my car.brand to access the brand my just created car has, and if we print this value, we get the output null because we didn't assign a value to it, right? But we already know how to assign values using the equal sign, right? I hope you understood now that we created a specific object from our general class and are now allowed to assign to all properties values of our choice for this object. But we can not only define attributes inside a class, we can also define methods which are just in simple terms reusable block of code. In this video, we will only use this kind of methods where we print something. The next video will cover more of the different kinds of methods and explains what void, etc. is, especially the syntax concepts like overloading, so I recommend don't missing it. Our method, which I for now call who am I, just prints some different attributes of the car. As I mentioned, don't worry that much about the syntax, you will understand this in the next video. And in our main method, we can now call this method on our object. This calls the print statement we typed, but using the specific values we assigned, like the brand and color. And since our year is of type int, and we didn't assign a value to it in our main class, our car has the default value of int, which is 0. But assigning all values each in one line, one by one, can be very annoying. And that's where the constructor comes in. A constructor helps us to set the property values immediately when creating the object. The constructor is just a method with the same name as the class name and runs automatically when we create a new object. By, for example, typing this.color, we access the color property inside the class and assign the value which is passed directly from the constructor parameters. So instead of typing new car, we are now forced to pass all of our values for the different parameters in the correct order inside the parentheses in the main class. This ensures that all properties are set correctly and avoids multiple unnecessary assigning lines. So to sum up, instead of assigning each property one by one, we can now pass the values for all properties while creating the object using the constructor. A constructor is just a method, and you can declare just as many methods and properties as you want in your class. But in this video, I'll stick to simple methods that print something. In the next video, we'll go deeper into the method syntax and some more complex methods. Now let's make this a bit more complicated using a class and another class. We are going to create multiple person objects. Each person will have a name, age, and an address. Note that all properties are written in camel case starting with a lowercase letter. But wait, I can just use string as my type for my address property. What if someone types any nonsense characters for my address, which is very error prone, and maybe it would be smart to give him a blueprint how I want the address. Therefore, we need to create a new class called address, which just for simplicity's sake only contains a street and a city. And don't forget the constructor I mentioned so that we can create the object and assign values to it in one step. And now we can change the type of the address property in our person class to type address. And also don't forget to create a constructor in the persons class. So now that we defined all properties, we are going to create a new method which contains a print statement where our person object introduces itself. To use this class, we go to our main method in the main class and create objects from it. I'm going to comment out the code from the car class, and to create a new person object, we type the class name followed by an identifier of your choice. I'm going to choose my name as the identifier and create the new person's object calling the constructor. Therefore, we are going to type new person, and remember in the parentheses we are now forced to pass the values for the properties in the given order. My name is Dennis, 20 years old, and my address is going to be address. And there is a red underline here now because I typed a string for address, but in the persons class we declared the property address of type address. So the compiler expects the value I pass in to be an object from the class address, since we set it so in the class. And therefore I have to create first an object of type address, so that I can pass this object into the constructor of the person. Now let's introduce the person by calling the introduce method on it. And it's working. In my examples so far, I just used one object, but let's create a second person to see how useful classes and objects are. This demonstrates the reusability of classes. One class can be used as a property in another class, and it also shows how you can manage more complex structures with ease. But that's it for today on classes and objects in Java. Try creating your own classes, maybe for animal, book, or device. Experiment with methods, constructors, and even class relationships like we did with person and address. All the code from today's video is available in our GitHub repository. The link is in the description. And if this was helpful, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated on the series. Next time we'll go deeper into methods. Thanks for watching and see you soon.